trust yourself to be able to think. Okay, and then this next section is super general in most. The interest rate. Remember we were talking about the AFR, I was showing you the applicable federal rates. This just tells as interest rates go up, discounts get steeper, prices on notes goes lower. As interest rates in the overall economy go down, the prices for notes, goes up. So then my little comment is, and additionally, a note with a high interest rate, right? Face value, if you've got a 6% note and a 9% note, the 9% note's going to be worth more because it's not so much, like if I need a 12% return, it's a lot shorter distance from 9% than from 6%. So I just say the interest rate on this note is 9%. From a historical perspective, this rate is low for commercial property because typically for commercial, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more on the 10, 11, 12% is kind of normal for commercial paper, historically speaking, correct? I mean, back in the 80s and 90s and all that?
Oh, yes, that is correct.
I mean, these days, nothing's normal. It's all very interesting. Liquidity means how liquid is my investment. If I have a $100 bill in my hand, if I want to go get something, it's liquid. I go and I hand the $100 bill over, and I have what I want right now. If I have a note, that's not very liquid. It's going to take me time to liquidate. If you have a piece of property, you can't convert that instantly into buying something else, usually, right? So the fact that it's not very liquid makes it worth less. So I always try to comment on foreclosure laws because that greatly affects liquidity. Because if I have to foreclose in Texas, it's going to take me, 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, something like that. I mean, it's a ridiculously short amount of time, whereas in California, it's going to take me 6 to 9 months to foreclose, hopefully not longer. And in New Jersey, it could take me 2 to 3 years to foreclose. So you can see that the liquidity is there's a lot more liquidity in Texas than there is in New Jersey, and that's going to dramatically affect the price that I can pay for the note. I mean, can you imagine, like, not getting payments for 3 years before you get the property back?
No.
Isn't that nuts? So I always mention that part. Manageability. Okay, the reason people want to make, are you still there? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I thought I hung up accidentally. I'm going to want, a pretty good return. Like, why do you need like a 10 or a 12% return on your money minimum to buy a note? Because I have to work at it. It's kind of a part-time job. If I can get 5%, at some mutual fund, and I just sit back and do nothing, well, if I have to do the work, I'm going to want at least double what I could get from a passive income stream because I have to work at it. Okay, and then another consideration is the position of the note. We talked about that. I always mention that. If the note is in first position, which does not compromise the value of the note, the evidence of rapidly increasing debt against the property suggests that a default may be imminent even though you're in first position. Okay, now this is the time value of money. This is other educational things. So like I was saying, it's almost like it's a mini note course in just your appraisal. And you could learn a lot just about the note business just by looking at this document like we're doing. That educational factor was a big plus in what the attorneys wanted me to put in, and I think it's excellent because then it helps me to not miss anything either. When I'm going over a note, I know that I've got to fill in all of these places and think about it and document it. We already said the balloon equals a quicker return of capital, but it's risky because he can't refinance. We already talked about that. Then you have simple legal implications. The note and deed of trust must be drafted properly. So not that I'm an attorney and I don't ever pretend to be, but I can notice if you do, I use a program called T-Value, which is excellent. My only complaint is that they don't have it for Macs, but I started out with a PC. But when you plug in numbers, if you take your online calculator and you don't have a complicated note, you can figure out if they made errors in the note. And unfortunately, title and escrow companies screw up the numbers sometimes. So, or they forget to have, there may be obvious sorts of problems, like they didn't have a due on sale or a late payment fee. That I actually didn't mention that in here, but if there's anything really weird that's not usually in a note, I mark it here. Okay, and then here's where I sum it up. I figure out, based on all the things, I figure out what kind of a return an investor would need, and then I calculate the present value of the note based on that. So then how do I know what the note is worth? So if you had to figure out what a note was worth, Franklin, what would you do right now? If you didn't know and you were doing an appraisal, how would you figure out what the note was worth if you didn't really know for yourself?
I would look at all the factors that we discussed, the terms, I would go to Zillow, see what the property's worth.
Right, so you can do that, but so now you can kind of figure out what property's worth, but how do you know what the note buying industry is doing if you aren't, let's say you yourself haven't bought notes like this,
I would call Dawn.
Yeah, you call me, or you send it out. This is what I did. Back up here, I took all of this information that you see in this part, and in a similar fashion, what I did is recreate the note. I totally manufactured it. This is what I did, back in the time, because I didn't know about commercial paper when I was doing this appraisal, because I didn't move a lot of commercial paper at that time, but I needed quotes. So what I did is I recreated the note to be like the equivalent of this note is today. Like as of 4/15, I would recreate the note and say, as of 12/7/10, what is this note worth? And I would recreate and modify the date the note was created, the date interest begins, and I would recreate it with different dates. Do you see what I'm saying? I kind of made up the note so that I could send it out for bidding to like 2 or 3. I got 2 or 3 bids on this commercial portfolio of notes, and then I just took an average of what I was getting, and then I kept those for backup in my file so that I could, if anyone ever asked me, I go, look, this person offered me this person offered me this, and that kind of a thing. So even if you are doing appraising a note that's not today, you can just send it out for a quote based on what it would be if the note was present. And you kind of, obviously you make it up a little bit, and personally I wouldn't care if you call me and say, Dawn, I'm doing an appraisal, and I know that people are going to get pissed off if I keep pretending I have notes that aren't really real and aren't really for sale, but I just need to know what they're worth. And if you call and ask them, I'm doing an appraisal and I wish you would just tell me what this note is worth, they're going to say, take a hike, take a hike. You're making money off of this, but it's a waste of my time. You know what I'm saying? So you have to act like it's a present value note, even though it might be for a note that was paid off already, but you're valuating it for a time prior to that. Any questions on that? You just send it out for quotes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, and then...
Are you saying send it out for quotes, meaning send it out for bids?
Yep, like send it to someone like me or, some other buyer out there who's on the internet and say, you know, a lot of the some of the bigger ones have online submission things,
Right.
and you just fill it out and see what they'll tell you. And usually what they quote you isn't what it usually will close at, but at least you can get a vague idea. Like for me, I had no idea about the commercial at the time, and it was really kind of cavalier for me to do it in the first place. But once you understand basic things, even if you don't have a lot of experience doing something, you're really still the best person, because most people, even attorneys, while they might know how to put the mechanics of a note together, if you ask them what will this sell for in the secondary market, they won't have a clue. Okay, so they do really need you. And then, so on the other note, I sent you an appraisal that's for unsecured notes, and when I get those, I treat them like business notes, which basically the only difference for business notes, and you can see it, I'm not going to pull it up now because it's getting late already, but is that the discounts are a lot higher. The return needed is going to be closer to the 20 to 30% range, and usually business notes, you can't sell more than 5 or 6 years of payments. Nobody wants to buy 10 or 15 years on a business note. They're only going to buy maybe 60 or 72 payments on a note. Okay? They don't want to be on the hook for that business doing well too much past that. Okay, now there's another thing I wanted to show you. So basically, okay, that's a little bit about what makes notes valuable. We went over the, we went over the document itself. Now, how about, how do you get the business? Okay, and I'm going to show you this. Can you guys see this yet?
Yes.
Okay, this is a really sad sack, and this is an old picture that I had done at probably the 99, I don't know, CVS or Rite Aid or something, you know. It wasn't even a professional picture. This, I mean, seriously, this was when, you know, I was just starting and I didn't really, it's kind of funny now, but and I'm going to send this to you guys too so you just have it, but I used a sort of font that seems like attorneys always use this sort of copper plate stuff, and attorneys usually have things that aren't very flowery. If you look at their business cards, they're usually black and white, super boring. Okay, so that's what I did with this, is I basically just copied the style that I see on business, lawyers' business cards. And then, okay, let me go back. Here's a valuable service you can add to your practice for attorneys, accountants, financial planners, tax advisors. This is the things on the back. That ends up being on the back, I think. All the things that you're going to need, but that's not so important. So in the inside, and I won't go over this now, but this is where you can just, this was what I used to get a speaking engagement, and also a couple of attorneys that at least called me. And I think other than that, it got word of mouth just from those two things. So what I want to impress upon you is that it only takes like one connection. And it can seem kind of scary. I don't know about you, but, you know, back in the day especially, I mean, talk to an attorney. I mean, it was really a daunting kind of thing. But all you got to do is get one attorney who knows about you, who gets it, and you got an in there. And usually they'll refer you to someone else in their firm, or when they have a client that has an owner financing situation, things like that. So if in the middle, you know, what I really thought in the beginning I was going to be evaluating notes so that people could know how much they're worth, like to sell today. And I have done like a couple of those, maybe 3. But mostly it's been for these attorneys that just for estate planning purposes or tax purposes, they want to know how much it was worth. And so they usually don't think of that, because they always people think of notes as being worth what the balance is, and that's the educational point that we have to tell them, is that no, a note is not worth I mean, even a piece of real estate, if you appraise it at $500,000, are you going to walk away with $500,000 in your pocket? No. Because then you're going to market it, and you're going to have some time, and then you're going to have closing costs and all those things. Okay. And then one other thing that was an interesting little side note that got me my speaking engagement. Oh my gosh, you can't even see this. Okay, it was, this was do you guys know what probate referees are?
No.
No? Okay. Probate referees, when there's a probate case, they're in charge of deciding how to disperse the funds on that thing. So if they get an estate that has a probate that has property, they get appraisals, and if it has antiques, they have to get that appraised. If they have retirement accounts, they deal with that. But sometimes they'll have notes. And so what I did, and that's kind of a little niche thing that I did, and I sent that brochure around to basically there were only 20 in California in its entirety. And I sent this letter to them with that brochure, and out of that, and I probably made one follow-up to them, and I got a speaking engagement at their annual convention in San Diego one year. And all I did is, and I was really scared, I'm going, all these people are smarter than me. They're all financial planners, they're all attorneys, they're all CPAs, but none of them knew the business from just the way that I did, from my angle. And all I did is give a 30 to 40-minute presentation on the things that we've been talking about tonight, on how notes are evaluated. And from there, that's how I got the connections to one of the other attorneys. And actually, I don't know where a couple of them came from, but for sure I got one out of doing that presentation, and that came out of 1 or 2 mailings to a probate referee. The appraisals really is to generate awareness that when that note is ready to be sold, I hope you think of me first. That's kind of the whole point of this thing.
Just starting out, do you think the most important thing is to find the note sellers before you're finding note buyers? I mean, that's basically what it looks like, is you've got to find somebody who's going to be selling a note before you can put it up on a website or start it out there for bidding.
Yeah, well, there's two ways to do business. I mean, you're going to do, let me pull up this. We're talking about B2, what the heck? Anyway, B2C, which is you, business, to consumer. And what you're talking about is finding the note holders. And that's, can you guys see that? Direct mailing, you are maybe doing internet things like I do. I get a lot of business. A lot of my business comes just from the fact that I've been blogging for almost 3 years now. And I had really no idea how powerful it was going to end up being, and I still need to do a lot more. I'm not by any means, all satisfied that I've really become the cat's meow. But what I have been profoundly influenced by is how much feedback I get because of the personal branding that goes on. People get a feel for who you are. So I think it's important to write and video blog if you can. But yeah, you want to get the notes. That's like profoundly important. Then there's a whole different model that I really love. For me, I like to focus on this, is the business to business. Because in this model, you're going to have, they might have one note, and they're never going to have another note. They're never going to know someone in their family who has another note. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's kind of a one-shot deal. This is a referral source that could equal many, many notes over the course of that relationship. So when you're talking about business to business, you're talking about attorneys, you're talking about realtors, CPAs. So when you're asking, well, which way should I start? And most people say, well, just go to the courthouse and start mailing. That's perfectly fine. But it's also perfectly fine to say, I'm not going to do a lot of that. I'm going to just build business relationships. So actually, I started more from that aspect, more than the direct note. Actually, I did do it that way. I started with relationships with other professionals first, and now I'm starting to get more direct note holders, mainly through other people bringing them to me that need help, or just the internet. So I think if you wanted to create a simple brochure that says, hey, I do this thing, it's novel enough that it could get somebody's attention.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that I like about it, is that you're not going to see a lot of brochures saying professional note appraisal. And however you decide to charge for it or pitch it, you're going to be unique. And I was always looking for that way, how can I be unique? And how can I be a little bit different? And so I actually did a presentation to those probate referees. I was probably in front of 45 attorney CPAs and financial planners. And I don't even know that I'd bought and sold more than a handful of notes at that point. Do you think I was a little bit nervous?
Yeah.
Yeah. But my point was getting the word out there so I could have more notes to buy, and especially ones that were referred warmly by people. Like if an attorney gives me a client, they're going to work with me because their attorney told them to work with me. Okay? And so that's it just depends on what you want to do. But what I'm saying, the note appraisal could be, you don't even have to be a genius at it. I wasn't. When I started doing the presentations and when I made that silly little brochure up, I was really pretty wet behind the ears. But I knew enough that to know more about the note business than all those other people in the room. And they were all clapped and they were all very happy, and I got other, roundabout referrals from showing up in a place like that. So I would say it's worth just making up a few brochures and I don't know if you live in big cities or small cities, but I would just do enough networking to get that out there, because it's different and people are going to, say, wow, what's this?
Last one. You were talking in the beginning, and another gentleman on the phone mentioned it. You're talking about bad paper. So is there one thing that you hone in on to know that it's bad paper, or is it after you analyze the whole thing, it's bad paper?
Well, if they took less than a 10% down payment,
Mhm.
If they took 0 to 5% down, forget it. This is recent, in the last year or two. If they have super bad credit, forget it. If they have below 600, it's going to be real tough unless there's a story behind it, and they had 15 to 20% down payment and they got some seasoning on there, Here's another bad paper. The value of the note is higher than the face value, the balance left on the note is higher than the value of the property. If it's upside down, forget it.
Mhm.
The only person that's going to buy that note is someone who's going to pay pennies on the dollar because they know they're probably going to foreclose. They're buying it like it's distressed, even though it's performing still. Most of the people that will buy notes at the best prices won't even touch it if it looks upside down.
Well, isn't the purpose of owner financing is for people who have less than stellar credit and can't go to the bank and get traditional financing for the most part?
Yes, to some degree, but not necessarily. You have a lot of people with money who either can't get a loan because of sourcing and seasoning of funds because they're self-employed, or they just don't want to. They don't plan. Their credit is actually decent and they have money, but they will not show their assets to anyone. They're not going to fill out a 1003. They're not they're very private. But that is a good point. Of course, owner financing works for those situations where people don't have stellar credit, and so to make up for that, though, if we know that the note holder is going to want to sell, then how do we make up for that? Well, we make up for it with the other factors. We make up for it with a strong down payment. We make up for it with a short term, maybe a 15-year amortization instead of a 30. We make up for it, with some seasoning, letting it, get on the vine and show that payments are coming in on time for 6, 12, 18 months before you try to sell the note. So depending on where it is, too, that same note in Texas is worth a lot more than that same note in New Jersey, right? Foreclosure.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no way that someone, if it's not a strong note, you're not going to buy except maybe 25 cents on the dollar, maybe you're 50% max if you know it could be 2 years before you get the property back, or 3 years if they default.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Franklin.
Thank you, Dawn.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.